Oh, yeah. What is up, friends? This is Tripp, and I'm here with the one and the only, the man, the BoDaddy, Boom Shakalaka.
Top of the morning to you.
Oh, yeah. Um,
And Happy New Year.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the 9th, but I feel like you're still allowed to say it if you haven't seen the person yet.
Okay. Yeah, I
But
haven't visually seen you.
so it's okay. It's okay.
I had an interesting holiday season this year. We discovered wet carpet on the eve of Thanksgiving, which turned into discovering that we had a problem both in the bathroom that was leaking into our bedroom carpet, but also in our kitchen. So I have gutted both spaces because the things they make cabinets out of these days is like that particle board. It's like pressed with
Yeah.
glue. Well, once it gets wet, not only does it start to pull apart, it sort of delaminates, but also it smells because it's off gassing. And so my poor wife has been living with her sister for like 35 days while I have been doing a emergency kitchen reno and bathroom reno. And so we didn't decorate for Christmas. There was no tree. Even the day of, there were very little presents. There was no New Year's celebration. And then yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of my dad's passing. And it's just been the worst sort of celebratory dud of a Christmas. I hope this is the worst Christmas of my life.
Oh, well, since it's a new year, this could be part of the turn,
Yes,
We're
let's
not
do
gonna
it.
have our worst TNT ever.
No, let's I don't know how you feel about the phrase manifesting, but because it feels very much like name it and claim it to me from the charismatic Pentecostal movement. But I do think there's an intentionality and something beautiful about embracing the moment. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we don't need to have a detour about that.
Okay. we have we have something we actually want to talk about, so we're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
I know. So in a minute, we're gonna have some off gassing. That's what we should start calling the intros. Bo is our off gassing.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
then I mean, here's what's happening this episode, which I'm telling for not those of you that are live, because you're still going to get the off gassing. You're getting the off gassing if you're here live, but if you're not, because sometimes there are people in the chat that let us know this, that they're like, "Why aren't you getting to the point?" And it's now turned into a game on live streams with Ryan Burge.
okay.
That some people who I know are doing it humorously start leaving in the chat. Can't you get to the point?
Oh.
And and every time they do, we reset our clock.
Oh no.
It's like a game that's being played, but sometimes people don't know that's what we're doing, and then they're confused as to why I'm putting up mean people's comments on the screen and talking back to them.
It resets the banter clock?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
but we're not doing that, or
No.
we'll never do anything. But here's what's happening after our off gassing. I was working on this talk that was the idea was to introduce process theology by introducing centering prayer. And so what I did is I made slides for my talk, send them to Bo.
Yeah, you did.
And then we're gonna play a game where Bo is basically just based off the slides attempting to see what Tripp's talk was going to be, prompt conversation. And then I'll steal all of Bo's good material, put it back in the draft of the essay, use it, and in a year or two, I'll mention it to Bo as if I thought about it. And you will all have the record here as to how mind meld happens We have off-gassing, we have
Yep.
mind melding, and then
Synthesizing.
synthesizing sounds better than just like
Yeah. Plagiarism
yeah, it sounds worse. Sounds worse. But
let me just say, as a coming attractions, this approach to prayer is as different from anything I've encountered regarding the subject. It starts in a different place. It has a different goal. It understands God differently, the divine differently, and who's doing the thing differently. I mean, Tripp, this thing genuinely is as different from anything about prayer I have seen.
oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
See, this is how you know Tripp is has internalized process so much. Is in my head, I'm like, I'm gonna get done, and everyone's gonna go, "That's exactly what prayer is." So I must be process. This is what I thought.
Oh my gosh!
I thought this is the most obvious explanation of what contemplative prayer, especially centering prayer, which I think process people should get preferential option for the centering prayer because of the attention intention distinction I draw. Which honestly, I was like, this is great. I impressed myself on that note.
Not easy to do.
I know. Maybe it was okay when written, but when the slide just made me even like it better.
I have a friend who, when he would preach, would be in the spirit, and sometimes he would stop and say, "Hold on, that was so good, I got to take notes on it." And he was like impressing himself with what he was in the moment when he got in the flow. And he would actually stop and say, "Wait, that was so good, I got to take notes on that."
I got to write it down for the next service. I've thought that before, but I've never said it.
Right.
You know, when you're at a multi-service church, sometimes you've got these 2 or 3 different ways you could pivot in a thing, and then in the minute you're just like, no, I'm going to weave these both in. I'm going to tell this story that I hadn't even thought of till I was in the middle of my sermon. Because I get up early, and I've preached it 2 or 3 times, like while going through a pot of coffee. So I'm like, revved and ready.
Same.
I may or may not, when I get there early enough, have a cigar on while walking the labyrinth and doing my sermon the first time. But I don't want to ruin my witness to all the California peeps if they were like, why is he ingesting tobacco and caffeine before he preaches? But nonetheless, but then you're like, oh, I think I'm going for it. Oh, wow. And sometimes, like, it nails. And right after the service, I'm trying to write down just enough on it, because I preach with like a bullet points where there's like 4 to 5 bullet points that in my head are the nuggets I've picked.
Yeah.
Because I have like 10 to 15 at the week, and I pick 5 or 6 and then choose the order, then do it, and I had a 90 something then, she's now 98, choir member who was a professional storyteller who would give me comments on the early church version, which is the first service is usually when there's like 100 kids because all the young families and everyone are there. And the second service is the older, more conservative UCC group. And she would usually tell me, you might want to dial this one bit back if you want them to hear you well or whatnot. But sometimes she would say, oh, that bit was really good.
Oh, interesting.
So then I'll go and like level it up.
Yeah.
But we don't have the Holy Ghost going on to tell us that we want to take notes ourselves. We got trusted elderly members of the choir that have to see all 3 times you preach, giving commentary.
So 2 side notes. Lori said in the comments that she loves centering prayer. So Lori, I need you at the end of this, when we go through the slides, I need you to tell me, since you are already a convert, if it sounds as radical and novel to you as it does to me, because we might just be coming from such different traditions. Like this may seem elementary or something to you, so you'll have to let me know if it's as foreign as I encountered it. Let me know at the end. But back to preaching, I just have to tell this quick story. So I preach without notes, and that's intentional so that I trust Spirit's leading. And
it's easier to pay attention to everybody.
Oh, for sure, because you're reading your audience. The other thing is, I figure, look, if you who have been thinking about this for 4 to 6 weeks can't remember what you wanted to say about it, what are the chances that somebody who's hearing it for the first time is going to remember it on Monday, right? So I just figure if it lives in your heart, it will come out, right? Sometimes it comes out your mouth without passing through your brain, right? Because you're preaching for heart change, right? You're not always preaching for an amen. Sometimes you're preaching for an aha, right? So my favorite practice of this was when I was a young pastor. We had Saturday night church because we didn't have our own building in upstate New York. And I had a very good friend, John Torres, who had a church just down the Hudson Valley, a couple hours. And they had 4 church services on Sundays. So he serves in the Air Force Reserves. And so on weeks he was gone, I would go down and preach for him on Sunday because I didn't have Sunday church. But preaching 4 times is quite an undertaking, right? And hold on, somebody's saying, Bo's mainline Protestant. We don't pray that way. He's familiar with century prayer. We'll get there.
Yeah, but now we got Jesse in the chat. Jesse Turi, elder of graphical sweetness. Danny Plata's here.
Oh my, one of the best preachers. Yeah. I love Danny preaching, man.
Yeah. And in one of the perks of being a really good preacher like Danny and jacked,
yoked,
is it doesn't seem like you're just like wussing out when you talk about like the revolutionary nature of nonviolent love and embrace across difference. You're just like, he could dominate if he wanted to. But see, between Danny, John, Jesse, Lori, Billy, Evan, look, we'll find out just in the chat if you're the odd duck here.
I would love it if I was. Listen,
because Jesse just got on and Danny did. We're about to do a thing on like process and centering prayer, and Bo said, "This is weird." Danny is on, and Jesse and Danny are in the Facebook chat. Evan, we see everyone's chat. Also, Matt Baker's on the Substack chat, and Jim Kulma, great commentary in the Substack chat. He was saying that the elders who give commentary on sermons at mainline churches are our version of the Holy Ghost.
Oh, okay.
Because we're just muted.
Okay.
So sorry for the long aside, which I will probably have to edit out now.
No, I love it.
Thank you, Tripp,
it's
for
all
giving
good.
commentary about comments that listeners later don't care about. This is at minute 14. Tripp later when editing, I just said minute 14. Remember minute 14? Because I'm going to search for the word minute.
Okay. So I would go down on Sunday mornings and I had to leave pretty early because, it was like an 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock or something, like 8, 9:30 and 11, I think. Then we took a lunch break. And then where it got really cool is that we had a 1 o'clock in the afternoon service because this church, Goodwill Presbyterian, was so awesome that they would send like children's Sunday school teachers to other churches that didn't have children's Sunday school to serve. And then they would come back for lunch and then they got the 1 o'clock service. So they had 4 church services. Well, when you preach without notes, sermons can be very different. So like at 8 o'clock, you're preaching the thing that you rehearsed as you drove down that morning, right? Solo in a car. But then when you see how it interacts with people and like what worked and what didn't, and I also, because I was charismatic, I would pray before I preached and I would say, Holy Spirit, bring back to my mind anything that you want to speak to your people because they're yours. and this is your word. So bring back to my memory anything that you would have, and leave on the cutting room floor anything that was just for me, just nourishing for me, right? I sort of reference it as the baker's dozen approach. Like, I'm going to give away 12, but I got to eat one, right? Because the cook needs something to eat, you know? So, what would happen though is at lunch, I would get feedback from people because the three church services, 8, 9:30, 11, were close enough together. I didn't get any feedback. But at lunch, I would. So the 1 o'clock service was very different than the other three. And people figured this out. And so sometimes people would stay, even if they were at one of the earlier services, they would hang around at one just to see if the improv style came up totally different at the 1 o'clock service. It was fun, man. I loved that experiment so much.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, it's fun. That is I mean, I enjoy preaching, but I really enjoy preaching when you know the people. Like, I take preaching very seriously when it was my job, but when it's a congregation that you know,
yeah,
uh, it's like this sacred thing where, like,
interesting.
you're called by the church to serve the church, so the church can serve creation. And so you spend the week wrestling with the scriptures, listening to your community, meaning the community you're serving and the community of your neighbors, and then you're like going, I'm investing all this time in getting to know my community and wrestling with this text to invite you to encounter the text.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun
Oh my
when
gosh, that's
you
so
see the
cool.
faces and you're like, oh, I
Yeah,
love these faces.
yeah,
Or for those of you that have come to Theology Beer Camp, like, I interact with so many of you
yeah.
online and get emails and stuff, but my
No,
favorite part of camp is the opening and closing, where I think I've been listening to you all year and interacting and stuff in chats. I get thousands of emails, and we'll usually send questions to
humble
everyone coming
brag.
to camp about what you're dealing with, or questions or struggles, blah, blah, blah. And then as it goes through, like, the whole thing of camp, everything structured is like, I've trying to listen and care about the space I have is within this community. I want to host something that matters. So, like, I try to name it at the beginning. Then I listen to everything at camp. And then the night before, I have like 4 or 5 outlines to potential closings. And then based off what I hear during the week and stories I hear, then I weave it in and do my closing. It's the only time I normally get to do
That's
what
wild.
was my favorite part
That
of
is wild.
congregational ministry is that.
Two things of feedback. You know Pete Rollins' thing about the experience of absence, the absence of experience? So,
Do I know about it? I had to live with it. But for those who don't know, he lived with my family twice.
Yeah. So, I have the exact opposite experience as you for the opening and closing ceremony at beer camp. Because I haven't received the emails and I haven't seen people's screen names, the opening and closing is actually when I'm least engaged, because in the opening ceremony, I'm often working on something like a game, like Au Contraire or something. And so I'll actually go to the, say, the fellowship hall or the green room, because everyone else is upstairs, and I'll go.
You're
And that's
saying that you come up with ways to ignore me, but you wanna feel good about it.
and then
Bo's like, "I've heard his crap all year long. Every Friday, I gotta listen to this shit. Do I really wanna hear what he thinks his greatest hits is?"
And then for the closing ceremony, I'm usually packing up and moving stuff out, and we gotta return.
No. You just had 4, high gravity floats, Bo. Let's be honest. You weren't leaving. You had an extra day at the hotel this past year. That didn't change anything. You just were like, man, there's a whole lot of this high gravity barrel-aged stouts people brought from around the country,
They did.
and a soft serve ice cream machine, and I got a liter mug in front of me. You don't want to disrespect people that brought delicious high gravity beverages for floats by telling them no one wanted it. So, Bo, servant's heart.
Yep.
You're like the Sam to each one of those Frodos that took that journey and brought their goodness.
That's true.
You're like, I will receive it.
Yeah.
With a humble and grateful, joy-filled heart.
I didn't want to fly on an eagle there. I have to walk there, and that's just honoring the journey. Yeah.
Okay. Can I say? Oh, sorry.
So back to preaching. I want to tell the story because it's interesting.
Sorry, I was off gassing.
We're just off. Yeah. So Christmas Eve in a mainline church is a fascinating experiment because sometimes up to 80% of our visitors are not congregants, right? They're families who are in town or they only come to one service a year or whatever it is. So I preached this message on Christmas Eve. It went really well. It was well received. I got lots of thanks afterwards. I think people were really uplifted, So then the following Sunday, traditionally a low attendance Sunday in mainline churches, something odd happened. It had turned cold in our area. And I didn't have Sunday school because it's the week, New Year's week.
Isn't it always cold there this time?
No, it was very warm in December. Very warm. So it had turned cold. And I don't have Sunday school, so I go into the sanctuary at like 15 minutes to the hour, and there are already 10 people in the sanctuary, none of which I know. And they're not together. They're sitting separate from each other. And I think, are they just trying to get out of the cold? Right? Because we have a community lunch, but that's not till 12. So maybe they're just trying to get, warm. Well, as the service starts, I noticed that I would say half of the people in the congregation weren't at Christmas Eve, and another 20% I don't even know. So I called an audible, and instead of preaching what I had planned on, I just did a redo of the Christmas Eve service because I figured they didn't hear it, and it was such a good message. So I just called an audible and went a completely different direction and then saved the sermon I had planned for the following week.
Ooh. And then you had less work to do that next week, so you could continue your home improvements.
That is exactly what happened.
Okay, one thing I just want to ask you. This is short because I feel
we do have something to talk about.
I know. Okay. This is my update from the cigar lounge yesterday.
Oh, I love.
Okay,
this.
so the boys, they're there. They're the 12 that hang out regularly.
Okay.
At my time.
Okay.
We had 8 Trump supporters last election, 4 not. The 3 not, other than me, are African American small business owners.
Okay.
But now he was down to just 2.
Oh.
And now he lost sheriff.
Oh my.
And over what happened in Minneapolis.
No way.
I don't want to derail on that because I'll just start cursing and yelling. But he's the sheriff, and he said, my daughter is a young mom in her 30s and very progressive. And I told her, like, the Constitution lets you make that point and then lets you vote him out. And it goes like, that's what we do. Like, this is what we do by serve and protect, is we make space for genuine democracy, this kind of thing. And she was a citizen. And he's like, I watched that video over and over. And I don't feel safe carrying a badge if the government is going to legitimate state violence like that on its citizens.
Whoa.
And I don't know what I would tell my daughter, because it's un-American for me to tell her, I don't think it's safe for you to protest. Like, you lose your amendments, and you should expect agents of the state to be able to kill you if you ignore them.
Oh boy.
And he's like, I have, for way less than that, I have suspended officers or fired them. And then he said, and on top of that, Trump's response, he said, and J.D. Vance response was the most vile thing he's ever seen. And and he, and I was shocked, one, because it took him this long to see this, but but he thought it was like he thought my daughter, who's obeying the Constitution, could get shot. And I'm like, I know you said you're a Christian. You should think that if any of the least of these could get shot by following the Constitution. But I mean, I didn't say that. But he's down to one of the 12 of Southern men with enough money to choose to work from a cigar lounge and burn money while they talk and hang out. And this is their group of friends. And so I don't even know what to make of that other than like he's down to one.
Wow.
And he had it 8. The tariffs got quite a few away. The Epstein thing got another chunk.
Okay.
Now, this means you hang out with friends and are like, look, the Epstein, I mean, yeah, of course, he's probably done some stuff, but he's gave excuses for everything. But this, and his reason is he now, as a dad, thinks he needs to tell his adult daughter to not use her constitutional rights because he doesn't want to have his grandkids move in.
Oh boy.
She's a member of the Moral Monday movement in North Carolina, and
okay, all right.
Anyway, so
wow,
isn't
that's like, wild? Yeah,
luckily we only got 3 more years.
Lori says, so what's up with the last holdout?
I don't think I should say anything. I know a couple of, but let's. Oh yeah, I can't think of a way of saying this without adding a whole new edit.
I don't have my phone on me, but I have a new Instagram follow. This woman, African American woman, she calls JD Vance Jamarcus Devontae Vance. And because she said he's changed his name all the time. I don't even know what it stands for. And she is hilarious. But now every time somebody brings up JD Vance, I think Jamarcus Devontae. That's so good. Tripp, can we talk about prayer?
Yes. Okay. So just so everyone knows, here's how this game worked.
Okay.
I wrote this. I wrote my outline for a talk where I got asked to talk about prayer and process. And then I'm like, the most process style prayer is centering prayer. So it was a lecture for progressive Christian church audience.
Okay.
It's like an introduction to process, but it's, you're sneaking an intro to process in by an introduction to prayer.
Funny.
And so that's what this is. And I just sent Bo the slides and was like, I want to play a game where you attempt to we're going to use the slides, but Bo's going to take the lead, and I'm going to attempt not to say things till he wants me to say things. I don't think it's going to work, but do you want to give me rules, Bo?
No. Okay. I think this will happen organically because, I, being raised evangelical and into my late 20s, early 30s, remaining evangelical, my view of prayer and my participation in prayer has been very, I'm going to say one-dimensional. I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean it's always been one thing, and I knew what it was. And so when I first got this slide package from you, right away, I was like, hold on a second. I think it's so alien and foreign. So on 4 dimensions. So it starts in a different place with a practice instead of a desired outcome. It ends in a different place in that it's not transactional. It's not asking the question, does prayer work? Meaning, did it accomplish the thing I wanted it to do? It has a different understanding of the one who is approached in prayer or received in prayer, and a different understanding of the person praying. So at every level in those 4 dimensions, the starting point, the end point, the one evoked and the one practicing, it's different on all 4 levels. And I found myself thinking, if people knew this is what you and Lori and other love your neighbor Christians, not storm the Capitol Christians, if the love your neighbor Christians meant by prayer, I wonder how much it would change the conversation, because I can tell you, this is not, when I talk about prayer, even if I talk about what prayer isn't, right? This isn't what I mean. And it's really transformative.
All right.
Okay.
Well, this will be interesting. All right.
And I think it'll be fairly organic and natural. So if the starting point is, what does it mean to say yes to a God we cannot grasp? My question to you is, your Christology is now higher than mine. I know that. And post-deconstruction.
I really appreciate that, Bo. Now I know I can witness to you right now.
Yes. So, but you believe in the self-revelation of God in Christ, right? And
yes. Just to clarify how this works, on the Christology ladder, there's like, not believing in the self-revelation of God in Christ in some sense is extremely low. Like Hegel thought that. Anyway, so go ahead.
Wait, but I just want to say that post-deconstruction, like for me, I have really moved towards God as mystery and Jesus as the Word of God, right? For my kind of Christianity, truth isn't in a text. Truth is a person, right? It's personal, it's relational. But I have a very low Christology. In fact, I'm in danger of a previous heresy called adoptionism.
Oh, God.
Right. I am in danger of it. I never cross over, but I flirt with it pretty hard.
Well, I'll just say that technically I would be a evolutionary adoptionist, where that has a very high Christology. I think most of the old school adoptionist heresy thinks it happened, right? Like, either they read Paul in Romans 3 as the resurrection to the Son, or they take like the baptism as the adoption of Jesus as the Son. But I mean, my book is either it's like a evolutionary adoptionism. But anyway, we can talk about Christology later. I'll make you slides for Christology, then you can just tell me how wrong.
All right, that's the next chapter. But here's why it's important. So, like, I really like Pete Holmes' misquotation of Barry Taylor, that when we say God is a word blanket, we drape over the mystery to give it shape, right? I love that shit. Okay. So when you say, what does it mean to say yes to a God we cannot grasp? There's something right away that I just go, whoa. But who am I praying to, right? So that's a huge, like, just right off the bat. And then below it says, and what kind of self is it that says yes? Not a sovereign individual making a calculated decision, but a creature already woven into the fabric of relation, already addressed before any word is spoken. So I just have to say, this is in no way, shape, or form what I have ever meant by prayer.
Okay, and but I feel like what you just said resonates with the bottom line. So it's a mystery, but it's not a mystery that's completely alien from you. And that, like, part of prayer, right, is like awakening to the reality that we're always already woven into the fabric of relation. And as a Christian, God is where we live, move, and have our being. Or we're a mixture of dust and the breath of God. Like, there's always we think, if we have a shitty metaphysics, that we have to pray or God has to intervene to show up. And that's just like pagan BS. Anyway,
let's go to the next slide. So here's a second difference: is you begin with a practice, right? Not a desired outcome. And that's fascinating and beautiful to me. So you have Thomas Keating calling it centering prayer. You pick a sacred word. It's a symbol of your intention to consent to God's presence and action within. You choose this word, you sit in silence, and when thoughts arise, you return gently to the word.
Yeah,
The
so
question, yeah.
I'll just say, like, so part of centering prayer is saying, like, if prayer in its most intimate experiences is communion with God,
Yeah.
and God is where we live, move, and have our being, then to commune with God is to rid ourselves of all of our idols or distancing maneuvers or the pain or trauma or all the kinds of things that actually keep us from communion, keep us from abiding, if you're using Johannine language, abide in me and I in you, or keep us from actualizing our identity as the body of Christ, or keep us from letting that same mind be in us that's in Christ Jesus, the very body we're baptized into. Like, so much of what the contemplative tradition in Christianity, but also other religious traditions, but Christianity's, like, I try to draw out some of the distinct elements of it here, is like our understanding of God and our practice of prayer should have some coherence. And a lot of times prayer functions where we imagine, like, God needs an update to know what's going on, or needs our advice, or these kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And so what happens in centering prayer is the sacred word, which like when I mean, this is my primary prayer practice, other than I have a list of all the people I've confirmed, family and friends and stuff, like your Tuesdays, Bo. So like on Tuesdays, I always pray for Bo, like different people I've days. So like, it's not like I don't do these other things, but like the centering prayer is like, what does it mean to just sheerly enjoy and rest in the presence of God? It's kind of like in a relationship with a person, like sometimes you have this agenda. I remember when Alicia and I got married, we're on our honeymoon and we're at this restaurant and we see this old couple at a table next to us and they hardly talked. And we had a conversation of like, I really hope we never get to the point we don't have anything to say. And now I think I want to get to a point where just sitting across from each other and having a meal is like, that's arriving at a different kind of intimacy. And we just get to enjoy the other. And we don't have to say anything. It's not like we can't, right? Or, oh, let's talk about what our grandkids are doing or whatever. But like, there's some initial types of relationships. It's like, oh, we have to be doing something, or we have to have this conversation. We want to have an experience or whatever. But there's a whole nother kind of trust and vulnerability that emerges when the bonding element of love makes genuine rest and enjoyment of the other's presence possible. And if prayer is always asking for something or whatever, then we're anxious about what God's going to do.
This is what I'm trying to say. I'm clumsy in the way I say it. That's what I'm saying. So Tripp, if my understanding of prayer is that I am a sinner saved by grace, and I'm praying to an omnipotent God, all-knowing and all-powerful, and it's full of words, right? Because if I say the right words in the right order and I believe them deeply enough, and I'm the right kind of person, right, to pray them, and by grace I come, and then that's when the transaction happens and God moves in my benefit on my behalf to bring about the thing that I'm requesting. It is literally the photo negative of what you're talking about.
But I'm not saying God is upset if we do that, or it's not appropriate in other circumstances.
Okay. Interesting.
But this was an introduction of contemplative prayer, and I find centering prayer. So like, if you think of contemplative prayer, take like Lectio Divina, the fourth stage of Lectio Divina, and the fourth stage of Lectio Divina is communion, and centering prayer is the practice of communion. So
yeah, I love it. So on the right-hand side of the slide, it says, what kind of self consents? I want to come back to that because, philosophically, I am a committed social constructivist. And so I want to come back to an understanding of the self that's not atomized. I want to come back to that. But then it says, to what kind of God? That's a huge question. And what becomes of the self and consenting? So in a later slide, we're going to get into this thing about entanglement and belonging. And it is so beautiful. It's an invitation, right? It is that we have been beckoned before we knew we needed to be called in. There's a really good thing coming up. All right, let's go to the next slide.
all right.
This is the myth of the isolated self. So we inherit a picture of the self as fundamentally separate, right? And this shapes how we imagine consent as a contract or a transaction between two separate parties. It can't be overstated how much this individualism, this notion of self as a standalone, independent creature shapes not just our theology, our economics, our politics, right? It is the water that we swim in. And so this thing that you're going to outline for us is so countercultural. It really is swimming upstream against everything we have been coached, groomed, conditioned, practiced in as North Americans in the 21st century.
Yeah, and one of the things in it, right? So if I think generally all open relational panentheists, I mean, there's a lot of theological pictures that would say this, but part of challenging that myth of the isolated self is it then changes even how you hear Jesus's teachings on prayer, right? So go into your inner room and this kind of thing. Like if you're only thinking about the isolated self,
Yep.
Jesus' teachings in the Sermon on the Mount on prayer are like, just don't broadcast and get adoration for doing it, as opposed to like go to your inner room is also going, when you pray, like go to a space where that which you're attending to and enjoying is just the always already present God of love.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like okay, we have 3 kids.
Yeah.
Every kid has their unique features that make unique demands on the parents.
Okay.
Those demands add up, and then the time you spend together as a couple just keeps going more and more to duties of being a parent or the house or dinner or driving people, like all the other stuff goes. And then it's so easy that you sit there, you finally end up on a date. And then I'm like, dude, Alicia, no wonder I married you. This is amazing. But it's not like we aren't being partners and parents and adults together and live together. You know, there's so many parts of our relationship that are just like, we're good at doing these things.
Yeah.
But just the enjoyment of the other, that happens when you go into a room and you are just the two that are enjoying each other. There's not like requirements and expectations or whatever. And sometimes, like this is a joke, but like, I mean, it's a joke, but I've said this. I'm not saying she appreciated me saying this, but like, you know, we're so tired. We're like, oh, we finally have time out, and we're both like just exhausted from it. And I'm like, well, I just want to take a nap. I was like, understood. Let's take a nap. But could we invent a story we tell all of our friends of how much fun we had? You know, and then you like you build up to this thing and you're like, I really just want to take a nap next to you.
Yeah.
So
there's a trust and a rest in that kind of intimacy.
Yeah. Yeah, but so like the next slide, the one here is really going like, here's think about it, team, and this is how the process people describe this kind of
so
not isolated self.
We get to the Jesus quote on the next slide, but before that, we listen to another JC, just Catherine, and she says, the theology of entanglement, and that's in the quotes, offers a revolutionary insight. Separation is secondary. What is primordial is connection, interdependence, and mutual constitution. If the self is not a substance, but a process, we're not a separate bead on a string, but a knot in a web of connection, distinct but not separate, differentiated but permeable. This notion of self as process and relation is transformative to the life of prayer, because it is not me as an individual coming to an external altar to engage a God who is up there and out there, but a recognition that I'm already entwined. It's pretty, I mean, that's pretty novel, man.
See, I think it's novel for Enlightenment Christians.
Yes.
But if we think about the New Testament, the images of the church or of the disciple, right, are in, like, take the narratives of the disciples. The disciples are the ones who continue to choose to follow. The church are the ones who are baptized into the body of Christ, who share the mind of Christ. If you abide in me and I in you, you'll bear much fruit.
There you go.
There's all of these participatory language for the body of Christ and for the Christians in the New Testament. And I think what the process vision does is give a way of thinking metaphysically about the actual reality that it's like, what if those aren't metaphors? What if you really, what if what happens is you are being brought into the life, the body of Christ, or in that kind of thing? Like, what if we take it seriously? And so you have that dynamic, right, of always already connected, and you have the differentiation without disconnection. So
that's powerful, man. It's beautiful. So let's look at the Jesus quote, because you know that I've never caught before how important the phrase "and close the door" is when in Jesus's exhortation or invitation to pray, his command. When he says, "Go into your inner room," this is in Matthew 6:6, "close the door and pray in secret." That "close the door," you say, this represents the deliberate letting go of both external stimuli and interior dialogue, the endless stream of thoughts and commentaries. I have never caught before how potent the closing the door could be. It's not just blocking out the world, right? There's something else going on in that invitation. It's not accidental that Jesus includes it in this equation.
Yeah. And here's how, this is one example of how I think I might just have been really processed from day one, because one of the greatest gifts my dad gave me was teaching contemplative practice to me as a teenager. And so you remember, late 90s, early aughts, the band Sonic Flood.
Loved them.
In the secret, in the quiet place, in the stillness, you are there. In the secret, in the quiet hour, I wait only for you because I want to know you more. So, like, I realized some people hear that as if you have to go in the secret because it might be the only way in which God might show up, as opposed to you're going in the secret because you really want to know God. Like, you want to encounter God, and you know that in that space is like the optimal location for becoming aware of the divine love that's always already there, right? It's not like you getting, it's not like John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world, he gave his only son, whosoever believe in him practice eternal life." And he goes on to what was 17, makes this kind of like deep affirmation of like the inherent love of God. It's not like you get that and then it's like, but it's not available or real unless you're paying attention, right? Like, the proclamations of our God, our divine belovedness, are not ones that are contingent on us. This is basic Protestantism too, right? Like, nothing you do establishes the fact that God gives a shit about you. Like, you can't, it is above your pay grade to disagree that ultimate reality knows your name, knows your face, and gives a shit. It's true about you. It's true about your neighbor. It's true about your enemy. And guess what? We close the door because we actually have to let go of all the external stimuli, the inner dialogue, all the things we say and pretend are true that creates justifications for demonizing the other or ourselves, right? And so the inner room symbolizes moving beyond that kind of ordinary psychological level of awareness to a kind of spiritual level of being, going like, this is the most true thing. The most true thing is that when you pray this way: Our Father, or Abba, like the motherly father, the fatherly mother, the source of all things, has this deep love and abiding care for you. And God knew you before you showed up, just like every mom knows their kid before the kid knows they're known. And then parents, we succeed when what? They come to trust a love that was already there. But now imagine this parent is unlike us and not ridiculous all the time. Like, so if you ask this God, if you ask Abba for bread, you're going to get a stone? No. He's not sitting there going like, here, we got to learn our petitionary prayer, right? He's looking, going, this is about the character of God. If you understand who you're hanging out with, then there'll be no place you know who you are more clearly than in like the encounter of belovedness. And that orients the way. Like, if that's how you come to understand yourself, then all of a sudden, like, you pray for your enemies are no longer your enemies because they have that belovedness too. Like, anyway, we get to that towards the end, but I just, to me, it was when you said this so different, I thought you would know the Sonic Flood song, and I've always heard it, meaning this is what Tripp heard it.
That's awesome. So we're going to come back to this entangled self in a very beautiful and poetic way, but first we got to cycle back to the practice itself, right? So you choose the sacred word, you sit and consent, and then you gently return when you become aware of your entanglement.
Yeah, and the image Keating uses, which I found really helpful, is you sit there and you're like, I don't have to do anything for God to show up, but I do have to just like let stuff go. And so anything that shows up, or like, that's when you use the word, which you usually are taking from whatever your scripture reading was. People that love some John Cobb, mine's regularly Abba. But it's not like you're using it like a mantra. It's using look at that thing that's occupying my consciousness. It's on this little river. I'm just going to let it go. It's there. So I realize that's just part of this flow, but I don't have to cling to it like it's part of my identity. And because what is the most intimate part of your identity is who you are before the source of things. Anyway.
So at the bottom, it says typically practice for 20 minutes twice a day. So I tried this. I've tried it twice, and admittedly, it didn't go very well. But let me tell you the thing I liked about it. The first time I held the word alive, and I just tried to be present to my aliveness. And I was very aware of what was going on in my body. And I got a sense of joy, especially because 2 years ago, my dad passed, and I'm very aware of what it means to not be alive. And, his dad died when Norm was 51. My dad was 15. My dad died at 69. I'm 52. I'm hoping to outlive my dad. I want to live to 78. That's my new goal.
Good.
Okay. And so,
I mean, I'm okay with more than that.
Well, as your friend. For Sanders men, I think that'd be pushing it, but I'm willing to try. So what I did is I sat with the word alive, and it slowly a joy grew within me. But I was so distracted by all these other things going on. So the second time I tried it, I sat with the word present. I just wanted to be present. And I can't believe how colossally I failed, man. It was rough because I found myself performing and just being too aware of myself and not the presence. So I'll keep experimenting with it because I love this idea and I love the practice, and there's something intriguing for me in it. But that's just a confession that I've tried it twice. I don't know that it went that well, and I didn't make it 20 minutes.
Okay, I'll just say this. There's not like it's just victory is doing it.
Okay.
It's like, and yeah, so like it's not like did it go well? You know, like if you keep getting interrupted by your kids,
Yeah.
or like oh, we were trying to do this and this interrupts or this comes, the point is that you showed up. It's not if all that stuff comes up, it's actually getting it out, right? Like it's releasing it. But you said that here's my like this is a Thomas Keating line that this week I've been using for my before I start place to reflect.
Okay.
And it's about presence. This is a Thomas Keating line. It's in his book Open Mind, Open Heart. This presence is so immense yet so humble, awe-inspiring yet so gentle, limitless yet so intimate, tender and personal. I know that I am known. Everything in my life is transparent in this presence. It knows everything about me, all my weaknesses, brokenness, sinfulness, and still loves me infinitely. This presence is healing, strengthening, refreshing, just by its presence. It is non-judgmental, self-giving, seeking no reward, boundless in compassion. It's like coming home to a place I should have never left, to an awareness that was somehow always there, but which I did not recognize.
That's incredibly beautiful. And
I mean, he's a monk, so he's cheating. Like his job is like doing this all the time.
I gotta be honest, dude. It really makes me wonder what life and faith would have been like if I was raised in this kind of Christianity. I really do.
Well, you just sat here and said you're only halfway done, so
okay. Okay, good. Lori says her advice to me is try a less active word. Okay, we'll do that.
Or when I was preaching all the time, when you know what the text is you're using for the week.
Yeah.
Like, what's the word in that text that you're trying to spend time with this text? Let that center you. And here's a secret I found. I'm sure Thomas Keating would be like, why are you thinking about your sermon when you're trying to do this? That's exactly what you're not trying to do. But like noticing what are the things that come up on my little stream of consciousness that are pulling me away from the presence of God around the word from the word I'm wanting to preach. And I go, because I know the community, I bet a lot of other people, these are the things that come up with this word. And so it's even like, I found it to be like instructive as to what's going on in our community time moment that would love to capture our attention.
I just had an epiphany, Tripp. I went to seminary at what used to be called George Fox. It was a Quaker seminary when I went there. And it just dawned on me, this is why, I mean, I drove across the country from New York to Portland to go there, and why professors, oh, look at that chicken. Why my professors like Mary Kate Morse and Carol Spencer, who were Quakers, and Dan Bruner, who was a Lutheran, and Randy Woodley, Native American theologian. This is why their stuff sounded so different to me, and why the appeal was why it drew me to give up my beloved congregation in New York and move across the country. This is what it was, is their practice and understanding of faith was so different to mine that I knew I had to go and inquire. I've never put that together before.
All right, Bo.
Yeah.
I really want to know what you think of this slide. I found this to be.
Yeah, you like this slide a lot.
Oh, this is what you're trying to do, right?
Okay.
What the word is helping you get back to intention, not attention.
Okay. I like the bottom where it says the sacred word is like a focusing apparatus on a camera. It's used only to gently refocus your intention when it has become fuzzy.
Yeah, so like to say like centering prayer is an act of will, not of the mind, that to me is one of those things. It might just be like I'm obviously like if you're a super nerd, this might just be why. Like it's so easy that you think, oh, prayer is about my attention. It's a focused mental effort, like concentrating on a mantra to suppress thoughts or to create a mental blank. Like that's one type of contemplative prayer. Centering prayer is different in the sense that it's about intention. It's a gentle act of will, a soft consent to the presence of God. And the sacred word is used only to reset the intention when it's been lost. It's like, setting your phone down to pay attention to the conversation or whatever. And the other image I thought about using for this instead of the camera one is like our kind of stream of consciousness is kind of like a muddy pool of water. And what we're doing with this intention is like sitting there to let the mud settle. And when the mud settles in this little pool of water,
that's good.
All of a sudden, you actually see the reflection of the sun in it. But before, it couldn't show the reflection because it's just a muddy puddle.
Yeah.
And so, but it's not like the sun wasn't there, always shining. Like you wouldn't see Jack if there wasn't a sun.
Yeah.
And that was one of Meister Eckhart's images for this. Is it like what you're doing?
Yeah.
Is doing it, and then it leads to this kind of communion, and that's why any of the kind of contemplatives of the Christian tradition say something like, they say something that a lot of evangelicals would find heresy, right? Like, well, that like you come to find yourself in the I am, or all those
So
kind of
good.
like, or they're really uncomfortable when Paul says like, or when Jesus says like, no, you know what the Psalm says, you are God's, or like theosis, or
Yeah.
they're like, oh no, not this. Well,
the muddying of the water is so helpful to me as a fly fisherman because you have to wade in. You have to wade in. You're going to wade in. But in doing so, you stir up the bottom.
Yeah.
And so there is a moment of clearing. You have to let what you have stirred up, you have to let it wash away and settle again before you begin. And so that for me is such a helpful to muddy the waters by wading in and then to let it settle again.
Judy in Substack chat said, Henry Nouwen described distracting thoughts as white puffy clouds that appear on the horizon and slowly moves into focus and can be pushed away gently. So there's a lot of images for it, but
it's so good. All right. Now the slides coming up are my favorite. Okay. Ready? So if we are already entangled with God, consent is not initiating a relationship, but recognizing one. So there's a Latin phrase. I was given a plaque one time, and I don't know Latin, but it translated into English, it says, called or not called, God will be present. And this idea that whether bidden or not bidden, God is present is one of the most like shocking, disturbing that I didn't know that already, and that I have to constantly be reminded of it. But it's so fantastic to know that this is not an ATM, right? A transaction where I approach it, and if I have the secret code and the right identity, that I can punch in the right numbers and get from it what I want. That prayer is not an ATM machine, right? And I'm not initiating it. It's such a relief and a release to say, like, if you're doing something in the morning and you think I should pray, you're not the one who came up with that, right? You were bidden. Somebody called to you, right? And that invitation wasn't initiated by you, but the one who's already present to you and with you.
Yeah.
It's so much better.
In the well, I don't know what you'd call this. My extended description bit is the self who sits to pray is not a sovereign agent establishing contact. We're already in contact, already addressed, already held. We do not initiate relationship with God through prayer. We awaken to a relationship that has been constituting us, and the us here is like all creation, all along. And one of the other images that I think, okay, clergy will get this, but I'm sure other people in offices have this. Have you been at work all week when your receptionist, the church receptionist, is off?
Yeah.
And all the wrong people know the church receptionist is off. And you may as well try to work outside of the office, because if you're
going to
there,
get much done.
The whole church, well, not all of them, any of them that have baggage, criticisms, or complaints show up, and they demand to be seen, right? And that's like they're just showing up on the receptionist is gone. They're just showing up in the stream. And what's funny is like thinking about that is like I noticed this. Carl Johnson, when I worked with him, longtime senior minister, more wisdom came out of that guy. I said, our receptionist is gone. So all of the full-time clergy had full offices basically all week, right? First staff meeting at the beginning of next week, he gets there and he goes, he comes in and he goes, so anyone want to give the receptionist a raise? And what's fascinating is you'll notice, he said, notice if in the next month or so everything runs more smooth.
Wow.
Because we didn't interfere and leave all of this stuff blocked up in the congregation. We actually heard it.
Interesting.
And so like part of what this part of what you're doing in listening prayer, in centering prayer, is like you're not, the receptionist isn't working. So this is all the real reality that's unconscious rolling up in you. And now you're going to acknowledge it in the presence of your own belovedness and let it go. You're like, oh, I don't have to let that cling to me right now. Wow. And then because so often our criticisms of ourselves and others are actually forms of pursuit for intimacy, right? Like we say the thing, but it's really, we want connection, intimacy, to be heard, and these kinds of things. Or the other image, it was that I've thought about using for this is, when we think of the parable of the sower, so often evangelicals, we tell it like, we're the sower, we're supposed to be throwing out seed. But what if what we're doing is wanting to clear the soil of our soul so that we actually become receptive, so that the seeds that are always being cast, like, what does it mean for us to fertilize ourselves, right? Not to be rocky or dry or this. We're tending our soil because we aren't in control of God showing up and all these other kinds of things. God's there, but we can, right, prepare ourselves for this like encounter. And so like just rereading the parable of the sower that way, I find helpful. So that's why on the slide, I'm like, the sacred word's true function is not to create a connection. It acknowledges what's already the case. And it's a gesture of attention to what we had forgotten or ignored. Right.
So Tripp, back to the Christology thing, because it becomes important. The thing that keeps me from being an adoptionist is John Cobb's Christology. And
praise be.
Right. Another JC. But when he talks about, there are other people, exemplars, throughout history and in different hemispheres and in different times and places that have known God in the way that Jesus did, right? That they are exemplars of a faith like that. So that's not what makes Jesus unique. What makes Jesus unique is that his availability and awareness to God's presence in his life constituted his very being.
Yeah.
In that he could say things that other people can't say, like I and the Father are one. And that relational understanding of identity is what brings me back all the time to this kind of a faith, and why I have kept going in the faith and not walked away like so many of my friends and family have, is because of that one simple understanding that of how Jesus related to God in the formation of his character and very being and his identity. And I'm so intrigued by that. So this idea that we are already entangled with God, who has been constituting us, right? And whether you say in the spirit or by grace, it is such a beautiful invitation and acknowledgement, an awareness that it keeps me coming back.
So here's something about that, right? Like JC, both of them, Cobb and Christ, you use Abba as like the dominant image of God, right? As opposed to like king or judge, or there's a number of them, which it kind of it's sitting there insisting on an intense intimacy, tenderness, and protection. And the two parts of it that I think are really important that I hear in what you're saying is it's a practice of dismantling fear. It shifts the attitude of prayer away from fear of a distant tyrant or judge we must placate, and instead it invites us to a relationship of trust, similar to the child and a parent. And the other bit is the goal is communion over conversation, because God's always already present and knows our needs, right? Jesus says, your Father knows what you need before you ask. And prayer evolves from conversation with Christ to communion to God. It involves talking to God. It moves from like talking to God to resting in God. And that's not, you're right, that's not dismissing talking to or having fear. It's that those are things that get undone as we come to rest in what's always already the case. Right. And so anyway.
Yeah. Let's go to the next slide, because it continues. The entangled self consents to an entangled God. So this is really where process theology informs us. The process insists God is not an exception to the relational structure, but is a chief exemplification. God is not a distant, unmoved mover, but the one who feels the world and is affected by creation. The fact that God is seen as a fellow sufferer who understands. So, I was thinking about the next time I practice this, like to be present to grief and even absence, like that God would be in that, the divine would be in that moment with me. It's intriguing, to take that inward journey. And I think I'm going to try that in the coming week.
And the the ability just to consent to the presence of God is because God's there consenting to us, right? And so our consent is an answering movement to God's prior constant movement towards us. We aren't initiating it, right? Like that's kind of integral to fidelity. And like you mentioned to Jesus, having this kind of full faithfulness, or it kind of as a way of making him both fully human and the image of the invisible God at the same time. The one of the things even comes to mind right there about grief. I don't even know if you remember this, but when we talked for a while right after your dad passed. And everyone should go check out Bo's shared the eulogy. It was beautiful. I started crying, and I'm like, I hope one of my kids says something like this. It made me think that your dad and I are pretty similar in lots of ways. But the you know, you kind of just start talking, you go on for a while, and then you said something like, I don't know what I'm talking about. This is just a bunch of emotional vomit. But thanks for listening, something like that. And yet, like, that was like the appropriate thing. Like, it wasn't like you just had to trust that I cared. And then you were going to do your emotional vomit. And it wasn't like if the next day I called you back and was like, Bo, I'd like to clarify something with you about what you said.
Right.
And so the part of what happens in centering prayer is like the emotional vomit or the trauma of the past or the pain and all those things just kind of show up. But they get to show up and not claim you because you're resting in that which is most true and has the most claim upon you. So
I like this. So, here we go. Okay. We consent to a presence we cannot specify and an action we cannot predict. So this apophatic part is really, this is where it gets a little woo-woo for some who are new to the tradition. And so at the bottom, it says the core apophatic insight. God exceeds every concept, name, and image we might form. God is not one being among others, but the inexhaustible mystery that makes all being possible.
Praise be.
So, you know, I'm a huge fan of Paul Tillich's concept of the ground of being. And the funny thing is, I actually don't even need that to be true. Like, I would stick with it even if it was just like how people talk about the Force in Star Wars. Like, I don't even need it to be theologically sound. Conceptually, this draws something from me, right? This pulls me. It has a gravitational pull to it. This makes more sense than any of the alternatives. Right?
And it's also like it resonates with the misheard mystery blanket comment.
Yes.
To me, one of the things, like in the middle line of the slide, which if you're just listening to this, you're more than welcome to go to the YouTube thing where you can see the slides, or maybe I can put them on the post for it. I don't know yet. But in ordinary consent, we know the terms, but in contemplative prayer, because we say yes to something that exceeds every concept we might form of it, right? But like this is just something that's true about the mystery of every other, right? And so, like, I don't know Bo completely. In fact, our partners don't know us completely. If their idea of us becomes more true than preserving the genuine intimacy of a mysterious subject, then we aren't really relating to the other person. We're projecting our idea of the other on it and going at it, right? And sometimes it leads to trust, where the character of the other leads us to get hurt because we feel betrayed or hurt or harmed by them. Now, what does it mean to give this kind of consent where the character of the other is not up for grabs? Like, God is love, but it is a mystery. We can, like, words are our constructs to get at that other, but are not the other. So this is a mystery, but it's a mystery of the infinite love of one who preserves us, brings us, and calls us moment to moment. And so it's like you have to when you have friends or partners or these kind of things, like you're cultivating trust and learning to consent more to the relationship and these kinds of things, and you can't make them an idea and all that kind of stuff. But the gift, I think, of the gospel is that God is love without remainder, and the mystery of God is the mystery of a love that is beyond comprehension, but is fully trustworthy, right? And if we go, why do we know that, or or this kind of thing, you're like, well, God, the fidelity of God, like hesed faithfulness of Yahweh to the people of God, or the one who is the bringer of the kingdom of God, told us, like, God is completely trustworthy. This, when you pray this way. This is what's up for grabs, is not a sneaky dark hand behind the back waiting to smite you. That's just not what the one Jesus called Abba. I know Christians would like that to be the case sometimes, but it's just not. But when in this space, it like gets me to think, one of the, like, even if I say that, like, oh, God's like blah 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 blah, it's not like we don't, like, internally or in our own unconscious doubt it. We're like, if the fullness of the truth about me, am I really lovable? And this practice is going like, well, what would it look like to pray where the experiment is that is the truth? What would it be to risk the presence of one who is an ultimate mystery of love?
So these next slides are about the cloud of unknowing. And I just have to say, anytime you learn something new or try something new, there is a moment where you take the training wheels off, right? So, like, for instance, fly fishing. I've taught lots of people how to cast in the winter because they got a new fly rod for Christmas or something, but the streams aren't open yet. So we have a couple months to learn, and I'll find like a gymnasium or a church sanctuary, and I can teach people to cast. Usually in like literally 10, 15 minutes, I have them casting the length of the whatever space we're in. It is so different, and I've had to learn this over the years. The thing you can't practice is being in the water, because when you're standing on the gym floor or in the sanctuary, you're 5 or 6 feet, your arms are 5 or 6 feet above your feet. When you wade into the water, you're up to your knees or up to your belt line, and all of a sudden the casting is limited because you are now present, right, in the water. Or for, let's say, bike riding, there's always a moment where you get the motion down, you get the balance down, but until you are moving forward without training wheels, you don't know how to trust that you're going to stay upright, right? I could use 100 examples of all my favorite things. Being in the water. Okay. Lori's a good coach here. Cooking is the same way, right? You can mix up all the stuff and do everything, but until you put it in the oven and release it, you won't know. Okay. So I'll stop with the analogies.
No. I like this analogy because there's the whole practicing thing.
Yep.
And then there's, you get there, it's not just like you're in water. There's also trees. Like,
there are bushes behind you.
I mean, I learned, I'm not good at fly fishing, but I love fishing. But the fly fishing example for prayer, I think, is great because you don't know what the currents are going to be on a given day. You don't know what's in season, like which flies you're going to have to use. You don't know if you're going to have, like, where you need to be involves a tree. So now you're not swinging anything over your head. You're having to roll cast and
True.
and like, just imagine the difference of counting, of deciding whether or not you went fly fishing was successful if you caught fish. That's a very different metric than what everyone I know that loves fly fishing. And Brian McLaren, huge fly fisher, he's used the fly fishing analogy in prayer before.
Oh, okay.
So y'all should do that. Well, I want to hear y'all two talk about fly fishing. Same with Tony. Tony's huge fly fisherman. And because like fly fishing, unlike other kinds of fishing, especially one that's using bait, is this like encounter with what is the case that day when you're in the water, and you aren't in charge of whether there's fish there. And if you think I've fished correctly because I caught something when you're fly fishing, then you're not assessing fly fishing the way people that love fly fishing do. Yeah. Anyway, so
there's a joke in fishing that says it's called fishing, not catching. There's a reason. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called praying, not getting, or something, you know.
Oh gosh, I love this. All right. So that moment though of taking off the training wheels or wading into the water or putting the ingredients into the oven, that moment is like for a lot of people can be the moment where they go, "Oh, this seems a little too far." I find the cloud of unknowing to be that moment for me when you put it in the oven, you wade into the water, you take off the training wheels. This is where it crosses over for me into, "Oh, this is an entirely different thing." Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what the the line from the cloud of unknowing that I mean a lot of contemplatives, but Keating used it a number of times. So did Catherine Keller, which made this is how the connection point for doing this came from.
Okay.
But by love he may be gotten and never holden, but by thought never, right? And so the path of communion with God is not through our thought, but through love.
Yeah.
And to me, that then there's like, you know, between the soul and God lies the cloud of unknowing that no intellect can penetrate. So we don't push through this cloud like we're trying to arrive and hold it and think it or to control it. The cloud is precisely the space where the encounter happens, right?
Yeah.
And but you going into a cloud, if you think what you're encountering is a tornado or a hurricane, is stupid. But if you're going into a cloud and what you're encountering is deep, deep love, a love that brought you into being, preserves and sustains your being, calls your becoming towards love and recognition of love in yourself and in your neighbor, like that's it's like a very different thing.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, riding a bike, you cannot practice balance unless you're moving forward. Because if you aren't moving forward, you can't just sit on a bike and practice balance, right? It is the moving forward is required to stay upright.
Yeah.
And for me, like this is where this crosses over, like, oh, this is not enlightenment rationality. Okay.
Yeah, and I wonder if part of my attraction to centering prayer is it to practice it. Tripp can't be a philosophical theologian when he's doing it. I am a child resting in the lap of love. That's what I am.
It's so
and I will say,
right?
like Keating talks about this. It made this point, which was really helpful to me early on. That you know, the most useful for most people is a word, but others use images.
Okay. Like an icon.
An icon or a mental image.
Okay.
And when my dad taught me contemplative prayer in high school, he gave me all these prompts of like, ask me like, where's a place of genuine rest for you, like an actual place, right? And so there was like a creek we would go to near our house. And there's this beautiful scene, and there's a rock right next to it. You know, we go in there and try to catch crawfish, and like it was just like it is the most homey part of the ecosystem I grew up in, and there are memories attached to it, and beautiful things with family and friends, and all this kind of stuff. And so out of that, I always had this present. My image was being there, and like on the rock you would sit on as a kid and dangle your feet off is like a giant lap, and like I assume it's like Jesus or God or something. I mean, the person's so huge that I don't actually see the face, but it's just like a giant lap, and you just kind of sit in it. And so, and it's already a creek. So then the stuff that shows up, I'm like, oh, why would you go anywhere else right now? Oh, you're worried about this thing that's happening at church, or you're worried about this relationship that's going on, or, oh, you feel guilty and useless over this, or, oh, I should be working more and being more efficient. Oh, all these other kinds of things. And then you're sitting there and you get this moment of like, no, you're, like the Mary Martha story, like, oh no, this is what you're doing right now. You're genuinely enjoying that. This is the good thing. And so yeah, anyway, I find the image thing there, but I've always had, my piety is so Christocentric.
Wow.
Are you surprised? Like, if I'm gonna sing hymns
that
I find theologically questionable but still enjoy, and after a few drinks get me to tear up, they're like the Baptist Jesus hymns. He walks with me and talks with me along the matter way. He lives, or I've got a friend in Jesus. All those,
Yeah.
Anyway.
I have so many songs that are popping in my head right now. But at the bottom of this slide, it says, what feels like emptiness in prayer may be a presence so full our ordinary faculties cannot register it. The prayer works most deeply when it feels like nothing is happening. What? Is that a Jedi mind trick?
Maybe. I mean, Jesus and Obi-Wan Kenobi have some similarities.
So when I talk about this is the flip. Like, this is where the ingredients go into the oven and are transformed into something nearly unrecognizable. This is that moment.
Yeah, and that's why at the top, like, the darkness of unknowing is not empty; it's an apophatic plenum, which is a Keller line. So, and she makes this point, which it sometimes is because she's trying to make a distinction between, kind of her process post-structuralism and the kind of like Caputo radical style, right? It's not an apophatic theology is not agnosticism. It's the recognition that God exceeds every form of knowledge we might attain. The contemplative tradition speaks of it as like a divine darkness. So it's not an absence, but an overwhelming presence where too much light blinds as surely as too little, right? As the St. John of the Cross image that he uses when talking about it. He'll even call it like the dazzling darkness. And one of the things I found so helpful about this as like a nerd is, like, through the history of the church and in other traditions, like, point to a depth of spiritual encounter that if I stay in my head and make the terms of the encounter my understanding, then you're avoiding intimacy. And so, like, this is a way in which the apophatic move is an ally to encounter, as opposed to, some people, especially like people that early scare quotes deconstruction or these kinds of things, like the apophatic tradition is liberating just because they get to say God is X and God is not X, like the tradition.
It is really liberating.
But like, what happens when that movement is a space making movement, or a movement that opens, it makes things more spacious for encounter, rather than that movement being one of negation. And it gets experienced by a lot of people as privation of the divine presence, because there's this assumption, especially Protestants in a modern context, that like, if we don't understand, articulate, defend, explain, legitimate our concept of God, then until we can understand it and know it, then how are we supposed to relate? But then you're sitting there and going like, I don't know, the people that the mystics of our religious tradition are like, oh, good, now we can start. Like, like knowing you can't do that and will never succeed at it. Even if you have a bunch of degrees, read all the books, and I don't know, have a podcast for 16 years interviewing all of them, like it's still not going to make the case that you're all of a sudden better at praying. Like you're not going to understand God so well that now you can really pray.
Mm-hmm. In martial arts or in Greco-Roman style wrestling, there's a move where, like, if somebody's trying to throw you over their hip, like a hip toss, you don't resist it. You actually roll with it, and then you pop out on top, right? There's certain martial arts that aren't based on like aggression or strength, but by absorbing the motion of the other, right, and redirecting it, there's this apophatic move is a weird one because it's not the cataphatic that we're so used to, right, of presence. And I would even go as far as to say, like, John Calvin's Gloria, this is Luther's, theology of the cross. This is a different thing. So
in the Evan in the chat talked about this being similar to somatic therapy.
Okay.
One of the popular articulations among like centering prayer teachers is they call it divine therapy.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah. All right. So the next slide, Bo, is the process bit.
I like this part. Now, here's what's funny. I actually connected more with this. I had more resonance with this than the cloud of unknowing. And I find that humorous because process, if you're not used to it or familiar with it, it can feel a bit out there. But this is, I like how clear this is about intention and aim.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
So when you get into process, one of the things you have to overcome, sort of a threshold, is you have to learn a new vocabulary, because Whitehead thought that the old words came with too much baggage and pre-understanding. And so he invented some new words or used them differently. And it can be a bit intimidating when you first get into it. But ultimately, it's like inheriting a new tool belt. And there are some tools in there. You don't know what they do at first, but it turns out they enable you to build something entirely different than you could with your old tool set. That's how I compare it. So, for instance, this initial aim is God's constant gift of the best possibility. It's right. And that's the lure. And then the subjective aim is our response to this, the process of becoming. In prayer, we allow this to occur with the minimum interference from the ego and trusting the process. And then this is the new word, concrescence. Tell us about it. Oh, Tripp, I lost you. Where'd you go? Uh-oh. Oh, there he is. I don't know if you're muted or what's going on.
Oh,
there you go.
I was muted. Jeez,
okay.
Tripp.
An hour 39. Mark an hour 39.
Yeah. There we go. I'm looking forward to significant edits on this. But yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna make it full screen just so people that are on here can read the thing. But so like if God's gift of possibility, which comes in every moment, like, so there's always the inheritance of the past that we're prehending. And you can't change the past, but it shows up, but it can show up in different ways, right? You can receive it in different ways. And then there's the future, the power of the future, the gift of possibilities. So every moment there's a spectrum of outcomes, right? That whatever agency the creature has in a moment, there's a spectrum of possibility. Concrescence is a word for what comes to be in that moment of becoming that now is a part of the inheritance for the next moment. So like what we do in the present is our agency contributes to what's been received and what is possible, and something becomes. And then, obviously we do it again. And so in concrescence, one way we go is like our response. We can align with the lure, the invitation or call from God, or diverge from it. And so the sacred word is a way in which we're practicing attuning or aligning ourselves to the invitation of God. There in that moment, we're practicing aligning or attuning ourselves to rest in communion with the take home of divine possibilities and love. In the process of becoming in prayer, we allow this to occur with as little influence as possible, releasing ourselves from the ego and all these other kinds of things. And, we trust the process. So concrescence is what becomes. But see, then in centering prayer, we're it's like we're training ourselves for communion with God so that it becomes more of who we are, so we can commune with God in our encounters with our neighbor or others and these kinds of things. And so you can see how both this helps us understand, if we think of Jesus as full humanity, how he becomes the image of the invisible God, right? By when he's in his quiet room and shuts the door and encounters Abba, or he goes off and prays, or in sometimes in that prayer, what keeps coming up is like, no, good, listen, not my will, but yours be done. But I would really like not this to be the case, right? Like that whole story is this sense of what is showing up in front of you. You're choosing, even in that situation, to consent to the invitation of God. But it's not like God determines it or forces it. It's always an invitation. And so concrescence, is metaphysically is like what happens in a moment of becoming. But in centering prayer, we're going, let us practice if our becoming cohered as intimately as possible for in this space, so that same kind of communion, that we get more and more communion coming out through us. Or if we abide in him, then he will abide in us. If you're thinking, John, or think of the fruits of the Spirit and the way that works in Paul.
The moment I became process curious was when I learned about an actual occasion. And if prayer is an actual occasion, prayer's not a thing. It's not a thing you do. It doesn't have substance, right? It's an actual occasion in that it is a live moment of becoming, and it has ebbs and flows and possibilities of change. Prayer's not a thing that you do. It's an actual occasion of becoming.
And I think this is, to me, one of the reasons the process, like riffing on it, is like, this is an explanation of what prayer without ceasing means. Like, what would it mean to pray without ceasing? So that in centering prayer, you're learning to make your life a prayer. By what? Consenting to the invitation of God in that moment, right? Learning all the things that just come to your mind naturally that keeps you from doing it. Learning to set them aside and trust that God is present and you're communing with God. And if we do that there, then it's kind of like strength training for doing it, when now you have to deal with a kid that's on sugar, tired, and still needs to finish their homework. All right, I mean, that's just one example.
So as we round the corner towards the finish line of this presentation, I just want to say that, like, this is really, it's a gracious way to end. Is like, consent is not mastery; it's the courage to be undone. And on the next slide, it says the inner room is never truly private. We don't pray alone. Talking about the social unconscious, like, I think there's a graciousness of reminding people what it's not. It's a really nice reinforcement as far as a teaching style goes, that because if you take them up to the lofty stuff of the cloud of unknowing, and then you do some processy, right, theorizing, but to circle back around and release them from, like, you don't have to get this right. You don't have, you're not performing this, right? This is a different kind of knowing. I just think it's a really nice way to circle back and release people, because they might be feeling anxious, right?
Mhm.
Especially if this is new to them. It's important as a teacher, a presenter, to come back around and release people from what they may have brought in as baggage or expectation or fear or ego, and to let them off the hook by saying, hey, it's not like that, you know?
In one of the elements about like consent not being mastery
Mhm.
is this bit's kind of addressing, like, even when you shared having tried this a few times,
Mhm.
going, oh, I failed at it or whatever, right? Like, spiritual
I said
progress here is measured
wait,
not
was
by
that your impression of me?
no, oh wait, it wasn't low
That
enough.
was a terrible impression of me.
Oh,
There you go.
okay.
There
Uh,
you go.
but spiritual progress is measured not by what we gain, by
Mhm.
what we're willing to lose. So like and I love the it's an act of exposure, not control. And so that sacred word, like what you're trying to do with it is to just keep going, like, here I am, I'm not hiding, do what you will. And that bit about unloading the unconscious is like that's what's happening when we think we're failing at it. Is the the ego starts throwing up all its defenses, and you're just like sitting there like, oh, you do it. All this suppressed stuff starts showing up, and you're just gonna not let it determine the moment. You're trying to just let it go. And so it's actually not a sign of failure. It's what the prayer is supposed to do. Because all the stuff that shows up there is always showing up conscious or unconscious in our daily lives. So what is it like to release it? It's kind of like unbinding the trauma, or in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, where uh what's his name, the guy like turns into a dragon, and then
Yeah.
he has to peel off the scales, and you're like, oh, this sucks, all this, this kind of thing. But what it actually happens is, like, it's releasing, he's being reborn, right? And so part of what the consent's doing is facing our own woundedness, releasing us of our trauma to be seen as we really
Wow.
are,
Wow.
and doing it in a space where your only thing you're trying to do is be in an inner room with a shut door, communing with the God of love, is transforming your interiority so that love becomes more transparent to us in the rest of our life, where we're hopefully attempting to pray without ceasing.
On one hand, it's very beautiful and enticing. I would even say seductive. But on the other hand, it's sort of frustrating if you were taught only one version of prayer, which is petition prayer.
Yeah.
It's agitating. Like, why why is this the first I'm hearing of this? Or why have I, like, not understood this before? There is a part of it that is disorienting. But it's more intriguing and seductive.
Well, I don't think you've ever said anything I've done is seductive before, Bo. So
Well, we also haven't talked a lot about intimacy, but I mean, this is a very sensual topic.
mhm.
And yeah, it has me actually thinking, like, nearly sexual things about intimacy. Like, there's something really beautiful about and naked, right? Vulnerable and stimulating. It really is. We haven't used any of those words, but a lot of the things we've been talking about have made me think about a sexual encounter.
Uh-huh. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not surprising the mystics like the oh yeah, well, say whatever you want about this slide. I realized I was about to say something, but we've been going a while and we got
We
too
have,
excited.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I'll say is that I thought it was interesting when you talk about the social unconscious, the emotional junk that surfaces not only in the personal, it's the residual of collective trauma, historical injustice, and cultural distortions. So the thing whenever a tragedy makes it in the news, ever since Ferguson, when I lived in Los Angeles, I know that anything culturally tragic that has happened is going to show up on Sunday, whether I bring it up or not. And I sort of brought the Minneapolis tragedy to this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept thinking, I wonder if we'll ever talk about like, yeah, but what about these extreme, tragedies? And what does it look like on the ground? Because people always want to know, like, but what's it actually look like on the ground? And I love that you here have rounded the corner to issues of justice, because here's what I did with it. And you can go to the next slide too, because it's applicable.
Well, I just want to say the one thing about that's on the slide for people that are listening. The line in here that you didn't read was this: the self who enters the inner room is already socially constituted. We bring our communities with us into silence, the traditions that taught us, the people who guided us, and the social wounds we carry. And you can think of all the ways like traditions that taught us can bring trauma. Think purity culture, or, like the people who guided us. There are all these ways, all these things show up. And inner work then is simultaneously social work. I mean, this is like not all people that do centering prayer would put it this way. This is like one of those like, oh, if it's really a process version, this is like emphasized, it's underlined. So the inner work is simultaneously social work. Healing the false self requires alternative communities that model trust and mutual consent. All right, which is part of what, if you think Jesus has these teachings for the individual, like what you do in your solitariness, but also the practicing the presence of God is also orienting oneself to the coming kingdom of God, right? So prayer and action are always bound together. And maybe a short example of this might be helpful. So like I would teach this in confirmation students, like 16 to 18-year-olds. And I've had students in the process of learning it get to the space that they're able to release the judgment culture, family, or religion had on them to understand something about their identity that transforms them. And in the same group over a 6-month period, I had someone both come out and someone who was identified as queer realized they weren't, right? Where both of the this is Los Angeles, so there's a certain social cred to just not being boringly straight. And so both of those things happened in there, but it was really this kind of like coming to recognize that the particularities of you are beloved. And if other voices say something less than that, they're disagreeing with God, and who do you want to trust, kind of thing.
So this part on the left about the justice, the dismantling of the false self, frees energy for solidarity. And this justice component is intriguing to me because I'll say it in a negative, and then a positive. In the negative, what we're doing now isn't working, right?
Right.
What is happening in so many levels of people commenting in our society is the breakdown of our social institutions, our connections, bowling alone and community, right? In so many ways, our democracy, right? In congressional bipartisan politics, what we're doing now isn't working. But something I sat with this morning after looking at these slides again and thinking about what's happening in Minnesota is the entanglement of those two people, the victim and the ICE agent. That an understanding of entanglement means that God, let's say the divine, was present to and cared for that young woman, Renee. And God, the divine, is present to and cared about that ICE agent. And that's why violence is so disturbing, is an understanding of entanglement means that that fabric is ripped and torn, right? But previous to that, the divine was present to and attended, cared for both of those parties. They were entangled already, and that's why violence tears at the fabric that holds us together. I don't know. I might be overstating it.
Well, I mean, that's why I was trying, like, pointing out, like, the result of it, right, should be compassion, right? The result of it, if done well, is we will sound like Jesus, not my will, but thine be done. And we're able to both be aware of that and to trust joining God in God's good work, precisely because we trust and are grounded in the deep loving intimacy of the one Jesus called Abba. And so, like, what does it mean if we practice this consent? Is that then we would consent to justice, dismantling the false self, frees energy for solidarity. It loosens our defenses and opens us up to feel the suffering of others more acutely, right? Like when you think of, like, JD Vance's talk made me think, like, he's not only like wipes his ass with the Constitution, like, how in the world is he Catholic? There's nothing that came out of his mouth that makes me think, like, what, but we all know plenty of people, and I've been this person where I am, like, simultaneously confident of myself as a member of Christ's body and defending myself in my harm of someone else who is. And so, like, part of what divine therapy or centering prayer is doing is, like, letting the water still so the light of God reflects more on the pool of our consciousness, or, we think back to those images. And I think the same is true, and this is why a process version of it is so compelling, is it also means consenting to ecological responsibility. Like, the illusion of our separation from nature is a root of the ecological crisis. We bifurcate nature. We think we're somehow distant and apart, and it's something for us to use and control. And so the contemplative path dismantles that illusion, opening us to the recognition we're a part of the living whole.
I wanted to talk about this so much. Listen, I can be a real dummy sometimes. And whenever I hang out with processy folks, right, at conferences or in their books or watch their videos, I always think to myself, at some point it turns ecological. It's going to turn into environmental concern, or right. And I'm always surprised by it. But of course it is, because once you get away from the Cartesian dualism that nature is just a resource to be extracted for our benefit, right? But that we're a part of the collective whole. Like, obviously it's going to end up there. You're going to talk about that. So this morning I found myself just thinking, man, like, old habits die hard sometimes, and I'm always surprised by process people's concern for the environment and the ecological. But it got me thinking something, because I was watching the Weather Channel earlier when I was doing this, and I found myself thinking, of course, because the divine is present to and concerned about places it is raining too much. In the same way that the divine is present to and concerned about places it hasn't rained enough. Both are true. And it's like the logical outcome of entanglement is these are connected.
Oh, yeah. Look, maybe you're just getting a little more process. Every year of friendship, you get 2 process points.
Okay. I love this, by the way. I always talk about the root and the fruit. That's one of my big things. And this is a great illustration of how action and contemplation are not different. That action is rooted in contemplation. And when people say, like, I love when people say, don't just stand there, do something. And because I was introduced to it, and I always have to echo back, don't just do something, stand there. Like, there's something beautiful to me about taking a stand. It's not inaction.
Yeah. It popped in my head is that Obama bit. Don't just boo, vote. But like when you think of the contemplation part setting up for action, the line I tried to use is that the stillness isn't opposed to movement, right? Because both of them are events of becoming. It grounds movement. The receptivity is not opposed to agency. It transforms agency from reactivity to responsiveness. That's what kind of like letting the junk that's always within our unconscious come to the surface and not claim us. That's what it's doing. So the false self acts from anxiety. The contemplative self acts from love. And when I think of like what's so compelling, if you do go back to the John Cobb Jesus bit, like he says, like the Jesus in his full faithfulness, right, as opposed to sinlessness, his full faithfulness to the call of God moment to moment, he becomes the image of the invisible God. And he in John's highest Christological moment and Christ in a pluralistic age say that Jesus, the initial aim of God came to occupy the interiority of Jesus, but not by force, but by consent.
Jeez.
And then we are asked to have the mind of Christ. What are we asked to do? What Jesus did. Not be God, but consent to God's becoming within us. But through full fidelity, right? Or think of the image of the muddy water.
Yeah.
Like crystal clear, you actually see the actual image of the sun, but you can't look at the sun. Like if you try to look at the sun when it's unimpeded, you go blind. It's dumb. Now you can look at the sun and not squint when you're looking at a puddle. And so Jesus is the image of the invisible God, or the word that is the source of all becoming, made flesh. Or Dom's line. It's the Logos in sandals.
Yeah. And I just want to say, to close this out, back to the fly fishing, to stand still in a moving stream requires strength and intentionality. You have to have an exert force. To not do so, to go limp, is to float downstream, to be carried away, right? To just stand still, to remain, requires strength and intention, right? It's a paradox.
No. All right, here's the last one.
Okay. The courage of yes, the cost and the gift. So the cost is surrendering the illusion of separateness. That's good. Relinquishing the comfort of control. Oof. Consenting to be transformed into what we cannot predict. So that's some mystical stuff right there, man.
Yeah, but like read that and then think Gethsemane prayer. Let this cup pass me, but not my will, but thine be done. That is the courage of saying yes, and it had a cost.
So the gift is participation in the relational life of God, freedom from creative transformation, freedom for creative transformation, solidarity with all that suffers, the peace that passes understanding. Oh, so different. I'm just gonna say again, it starts in a different place. It has a different goal. The one who's prayed to, it's a different understanding of divine presence and entanglement. And who prays is not an initiating individual. it's just, this is a very different approach to prayer.
Well, and you get, and you see how, like, you're really just talking about prayer in ways that, in my mind, it's like, it is like a process interpretation of centering prayer seems to me to, like, make sense of all of Jesus's teachings to his disciples about prayer, make sense of how the gospel narratives point out Jesus' solitariness as animating, right, his own ministry, where he goes off for solitude, obviously teaches his disciples to, these kinds of things. And then when we see it in Gethsemane, it's there, that coheres with how the early church understood participating in the mind of Christ, the body of Christ, all these kind, like, the thing to me that I find it compelling is like a genuine, beautiful account of prayer. It, like, process, like, makes sense of the witness of the early church to Jesus and his disciples, and then the communities that are being formed. And you know, you don't have to go process, but I'm just thinking, if the actual teachings and practice of Jesus and the invitation Paul gives to the early church is more parsimoniously affirmed in the description, then perhaps, I don't know, perhaps you should be a process theologian like Paul and Jesus.
One of my favorite humans on the planet, Tim Burnett, says this is what he wrote his dissertation on. How have I not put that together?
Well, you know, your heart was hardened at that point, Bo.
Oh, that the glory of God might be revealed.
Yeah. Just
that's so
the
funny.
Slow, calm, constant invitation to just be baptized into the waters of Whitehead.
Oh my goodness, I love it. All right, Tim, I'm gonna request. I got to read this now.
All right, now, Bo.
Yeah.
Look, because I know we've gone over 2 hours, so you're probably sitting there with stuff you have to go do.
I do.
And so I feel like, since Tim is on here, you should give Tim your benediction today. I mean, everyone else can get it secondhand, but I'm kind of interested in exactly how you're going to get to your, you know, well, maybe it was just the benediction for 2025. You might need a new one. I don't know. But
no, I how about, yeah, we'll just keep rolling with it. So, may you be entangled in goodness, and I'll see you in Valhalla, brother.
Oh man. Now, why won't it turn off? I don't know.
What? Have you ever what?
Oh, there it is.
Okay, I was gonna say
they updated the platform, and it was in a different spot. All right.